Hello everybody, today I will be reading a book. I know this is a slight departure, but I've been wanting to read more. And new year, new reading, so. The book. I present to you Spinal Catastrophism, A Secret History by Thomas Me Nihan. With a preface by Ian Helmut Grant. Now, you might be thinking, what's this book about? I can't really describe it, technically. To my scoliosis. Great way to start a book. No part of this book may be reproduced or transmitted in any ways, recording of any information or retrieval system without prior permission from the publisher, the United Kingdom. I don't really care. I'm going to be posting this in small chunks, and I won't be really highlighting it. Just know that I'm going to be reading it, because I want to read this. Preface. A Plutarchian Coda, Ian Hamilton Grant. Aristotle reports that birds never fly backwards, or tail first. This is not simply a fact of avian ethology, but an exponent of the world's choreographies, which are unlimited in principle. Thus, any exhibition of the resulting world must cohabit these choreographies, i.e. must enclose their series in a finite form, itself contributory to those movements. Movements are world makers of exactly the sort the world makes, whatever that means. Etching ontogenesis. Let me check with that. Let me see if there's actually a definition for ontogenesis. Development of an individual organism or anatomical or behavioral feature from the early states of maturity. Compare with phylogenesis, the evolutionary development and diversification of species and organisms, blah blah blah, and it sends me back and forth. Okay, but it's talking about the development of features over the earth, by a way which the latter acquires. So to speak, lithic morpholects in consequence of what made them. Oh dear. Yep. A mark's being made renders any actual beginnings of directionality into reference for subsequent movements. But nothing dictates the latter movements merely continue or issue from their precursor states. Later advents may reorient earlier, with morphogenic vortexes repeatedly fastening or even revoking the axis of accident forms. Hence, Aristotle's law of movement, according to which the antecedent has its actually consequent, applies alike in figures and things animate. It constitutes a series. Each successive term potentially contains its predecessor, i.g., the square, the triangle, the century power, the self-nutritive. Whereas Aristotle clearly foresees the progressive and a bias issuing from this law. It is a Schelling. Who's Schelling? I know who Aristotle is. I never heard of Schelling. Or have I heard of Schelling? Schelling. Frederick William Joseph Schelling, German philosopher. Natural philosophy, German idealism. Okay. Born in... I'm sure he'll come up again if he's important, right? Recognized an important precursor of the theory of recapitulation, particularly as advanced by Kelmer has received by the post-Kantian philosophy of nature, that law known variously without implying any constancy of content, as Michael's series or biogenic law states that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, which takes the level of products, postulates that the later stages of lower forms are recapitulated in lower stages of higher products. This raises a plethora of exploratory vectors, amongst which I will note two. Does finality of form obtain in nature, or put it differently, does ascent terminate with the actualization of a particular form, that is to say, following Aristotle's formulation of the law of motion? Can there be a form encircling all nature's potentials amounting to the most final of final causation? In postulating an end to nature, is there an ultimate form, a final form of life? If such a form has, does, or will obtain ontogenesis is cast simply as productive individuation, as in Simondon, but via a singular persistent embodiment, as the progressive exaltation of all development. For in this scenario, ontogenesis would terminate in an ontologically incapable of producing its own revelation, i.e., it would become ontographically compromised. Ontographically. I mean, this is going to be the most scuffed reading ever. I don't care. Ontographic. And that's orthographic. Fewer than 0.01 occurrences per millions of words in modern written English. Ontio, relating to individual organisms. Graphic. Words that don't exist for $7 trillion, please. But basically what I'm getting here is that the final, an ultimate form of life could not exist. How far back in phylogenetic history does recapitulation extend? Does the Great Circle entail the achievement of this cervical zenith must concede with the recovery via phylogenetic catabasis of the lifeless in the living? For this Lovecraftian orphigism, polarities are maximally coincident to the degree they maximally diverge for the moment. We must note that if one is answered in negative, so too must the other, since to deny the first while asserting the second is to assert inconsistently that the exhaustion of nature is achieved from the first, or that ontology never took place. Bring up ontology. Computer, bring me the definition of ontology. Okay, the development of a life form from an earlier state to a latter state, bringing in its unique forms. According, the problems exposed by the very idea of a form of natural history, a form of development, is a Platonic being itself. Conceivable? Initiate the ungrounding Myhonian here minds, beginning from the mechanical agony of the bad back resulting from the vain reorientation of lithographic planes subjected to organic and so implemented resculpting, of the possible terminal of the spinal reorganization of lithic cycles. The cervical xenix, quote unquote, is neither absolute nor final, but only a medium for which phylogenetic catabasis. I understand phylogenetics. Please explain catabasis to I, the fool. Catabasis. Meaning. Comparative mythology. Catabasis. Journey to the underworld. Interesting terminology use. Descends. The ladder of beings does not lead ever upward, but points to critical reversal, so that the utmost rungs are bound to coincide within the preceding their achievement. Will this fall terminate, like that of Icarus, in a abrupt confrontation with the earth? Or does the great circle descend deeper into phylic prehistory? What are the seeds of all becoming, the principles in which it emerges? If neither anabasis, the cervical xenus, nor catabasis, the lithic reversion, attain finality of form, what ultimate determinants can the great cycle have? What determinants can the great circle have? Here the question of the form of what is intelligible by definition assumes fully amorphic impact. We might even ask topology does not in fact eliminate the prospect of a valid critique of the coincidence of the sensible and the intelligible. So, insofar as asking the form of the accomplished being is indissociably a problem for neosis as for piosis, for both appearing as much as for much appearing as much for the appearing of being, there entails an ontographic projectivity rather than a critical disassociation. Indeed, the ontology presented by all forms of finalism may therefore be identified by its double incapacity for ontography, being auto-exhibited in one hand for the ontogeny, the product of being, on the other. An ontographic being incapable of self-revelation is blind and antiogenic. Precisely because it is unproductive, ontography therefore implies ontogeny. If sensibility neither attains without the sensible production of the sensible, or intelligibility without at least the possible intellection, ontogeny accordingly is ontography insofar not only as graphisms are, but also insofar as they are, because they are made or generated. I'm going to continue reading. Ontography is ontogenetically only if amongst the capabilities of being are exhibitions that grasp being as its integral prothesis. Ontogenetically, therefore, the graphic must consume. Therefore, the graphics minutely augments beings' unstable futures, just as Earth illuminates its possible halves. Hence, Richard Long's stone lines. For example, which are the audiographs of fragile actuality? The what is this word? Rectilinearity of lithographs, the planetary surface which the rational operation that made them. Incomprehensible. I have met a terrible fate. Miholin's graphic strategies are similarly generated to articulate lines. They are not records of some blunt imitation, but sensibly mediation and knotted bonds reversibly formed by intelligible, sensible, the biped's upright guide tends irrevocably to the quadruped's geophilia. The forward becomes downwards and the upward geographically forwards. Crucially, this axial twisting, which tapping of ideality is not sensibly neutral sense, it acts, it twists, makes pain, cervical curvature. Meanwhile, what we might call a Fitchian register, the presentational stress towards grasping the great circle forces, nunagami, nungeni, beyond the forms in which happens to be incident. One second, I'm texting someone. Okay, I'm gonna cut most of that time break out. This all has unlikely precedent in Plutarch's Platonic question, where he unpacks Plato's likenings of all incomprehensible to a single line that has been divided into unequal segments to reveal two entailments of this image of the universe, this cosmography. a line is continuous prior to division. Idea and perceptibility are coterminous insofar as the intelligible patterns of which perceptibles semblances or reflections. Numbers. The demonstration of this last point proceeds via a leading down or catabasis through reasoning to geometry, then astronomy, harmonics, somatics, leading upward through abstraction. Crucial to the hypothesis in this regard comes the latter. When Plutarch acts after the surface geometry on which the god traces the design of the nature of the all, the dodecahedron forms the preferred cosmographic surface, since it is the furthest withdrawn from straightness and is associated with the sphere. The continuous straight line traced on the planar surface differs topologically in the potency from the same line traced over a dodecahedron. Where extremes do not meet, they must nevertheless cross. That idea, always exhibited in a medium, is just their imitate their generation from antecedents being so renders. And just as Plutarch combines the Middle Platonic theme of the image of the universe with the conceiving of becoming, this accord with Plutarch's consistent formulation of the sensible, the intelligible twofold. Well, at least they're getting us like reference sources here. I'm at page 8. Plutarch's address to an ontologically graphic thus marking only both together enable criticism of since the terminus of the is not being but appearing, in which this is just the prelude. Two issues emerge. Firstly, the causal symmetry between being and mimesis take intelligible sensual analogy asymmetrical in turn by, secondly, setting the ontological dimension of the problem itself onto ontogenic. If that is, mimesis consists of the imitating of being, but being itself outcome the generation, then generation by imitation, making, is closer to ontology than its result. Generation, then generation by imitation. So far, it creates that of homeostasis theo. This is adequate to the extent that production occurs, rather so far in the features and generations the products repeat. Though the initial prose and prose by its anthology. You know, I never read the preludes of books. I never read the preludes of books. I never read them. Homeostasis. This is just, you know what? I'm cutting this. I'm not reading the prelude on tape. You can just pretend I read the prelude on tape. And if you want to read the prelude, you can go get the book.